the back, feel free to come forward as well. You don't have to sit so far back. Feel free to come forward if you like. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا نبينا محمد ما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So, Sheikh, do you know what we're going to discuss today, the topic?
No, I don't.
Okay, because I haven't communicated with you. I've been talking to Rafif, alhamdulillah. So today we're going to discuss another one of Iqbal's famous and epic poems called Masjid-e-Qurtuba, the mosque of Qurطبہ. Now, Iqbal, one of the really unique things about Allama Iqbal is that the reason why he's one of the most important Muslims of the 20th century is that he was such a multifaceted figure. He combined aesthetic brilliance as a poet and philosophical depth as a philosopher and spiritual feeling as a as a very spiritual Muslim, and political urgency or political content as a politician. And he combined all of these faculties in one. And unlike other poets who were better than Iqbal, poetically speaking, like Ghalib, for example, is a better poet than Iqbal, Iqbal reaches out further, and such his message reaches further and is more, in a sense, certainly today, more urgent. Now, in this poem, Masjid-e-Qurtuba, we're going to see a kind of a different side of Iqbal than Shikwa. So Shikwa was quite intense, was written in a very sort of tumultuous time. Masjid-e-Qurtuba is penned in 1932, and Iqbal is on the way back from England. He attends something called the Round Table Conference, which is a meeting of all the political leaders of the subcontinent with the British government. And they meet in 1931, 32, and they're trying to hash out what will an independent India look like. What does it mean for the subcontinent to be free from the British? They're talking, they're debating, and Iqbal is one of the attendees. So on the way back, he stops by in Andalusia, in Qurtuba, and he visits Granada, probably Seville, and of course Qurtuba. And he writes this poem while he's there. He's so affected by his surroundings and the atmosphere he's in. He's just, in a sense, overwhelmed, or he's so inspired. And this poem is written in Qurtuba and in other parts of Andalusia. In this poem, we see actually before that, I want to show you something. So Iqbal lived in a time where there were very few photos, but subhanallah, we actually have a photo of Allama Iqbal at the Masjid-e-Qurtuba. Who's been, by the way, to Qurtuba and been to the mosque? Yes, sorry, the
church.
Mosque/cathedral. Yes.
They don't let people pray anymore.
Yes. So Iqbal visits in 32, and it's said he's the only Muslim in 800 years to pray at the mosque. And that's a very probable claim. So Iqbal got special permission to pray. And we have these pictures, subhanallah. So the mosque in Qurtuba, for those who don't know, Gigi? Oh, yes, please. The mosque in Qurtuba, for those who don't know, was constructed around like the year 1000, basically, and was the centerpiece of the Muslim state in Andalusia, the spiritual center, the political center. And it's this brilliant, very unique, very powerful piece of architecture, similar to the Hagia Sophia, similar to Masjid-e-Nabawi, in Medina.
He actually drew the inspiration from this one, the way Masjid-e-Nabawi is now.
Yes.
It looks very similar. But it was from this.
For sure. So when you go to Andalusia, and all of you must go, you must visit and remember Iqbal and ponder what Iqbal pondered. So in this poem, we see a really reflective Iqbal, naturally, right? He's pondering life and existence. He's pondering the cycle of civilizations, they rise and they fall. He's standing in the, converted mosque of the once great Andalusian Muslim civilization. It really affects him. And so this poem is the product of that. The poem itself is 128 lines, organized into 8 stanzas, or 8 paragraphs, basically. And in this poem, Iqbal addresses the mosque itself. He's talking to the mosque. And of course, he uses the mosque as a sounding board to reflect on wider themes. Iqbal, one of the interesting things about Iqbal is he never really praises art or architecture. It very rarely comes up in his poetry. He goes to Granada, and he's actually very unimpressed by the epic Alhambra. He never writes about the Taj Mahal, for example, or the Badshah Mosque in Lahore. So architecture is not really one of his things that he wrote about. But he uses the mosque here, as I said, as a springboard to talk about a couple of themes. Now, what I've done is we're going to analyze 5 themes from the poem, roughly in chronological order. And the way we'll read it is I've conscripted Osama here, and I will read a couplet in the Urdu, and then Osama will read the translation. I'm very, very tired, so I don't want to read the translation as well. I had a 3-hour Farsi class today, and I am wiped. So,
Teaching it?
No, learning. So, yes. And I think if we do it like this, we can go through the poem in a more measured pace. We can really reflect on each couplet, and it matches the more sort of gentle, more reflective tone of the poem as well. So, Osama, come here. Okay. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, stanza 1. This is the opening, and Iqbal loves to open his epic poems in a very cinematic and aesthetic way. So, Silsilaye roz o shab, naksh kare hadisat. Silsilaye roz o shab, asle hayat o mamat.
The sequence of day and night is the shaper of events. The sequence of day and night is the essence of life and death.
सिलसिलाए रोज़ व शब तारे हरीर दो रंग जिससे बनाती है ज़ात अपनी कबाए सिफ़ात.
The sequence of day and night is a two-colored strand of silk from which the divine essence fashions its robe of attributes.
सिलसिलाए रोज़ व शब साज़ अज़ल की फ़ग़ां जिससे दिखाती है ज़ात ज़ेर बमे मुमकिनात.
The sequence of day and night is a reverberation of the symphony of eternity, from which the divine demonstrates possibilities.
आनी ओ फ़ानी तमाम मोजज़ा हाय हुनर कार जहान बेसबात.
Transitory and transient, all these miracles of skill. The works of the world are impermanent. The works of the world are impermanent.
अव्वल व आखिर फना बातिन व ज़ाहिर फना नक्श कुहन हो कि नू मंजिल आखिर फना.
The beginning and the end, the interior and the exterior are all fana. Whether old or new, the final destination is fana.
So this is Iqbal reflecting on time. Time passes, the cycle of night and day. What do these big buildings and fancy structures and great empires mean when it's all sort of going to pass away, right, in time? You can see this very reflective pentateuch of Iqbal here. Yes, Bilal?
What's fana mean?
Yes, exactly. So, fana is... I deliberately left this word untranslated because the basic meaning is like oblivion. So everything will pass and go into oblivion, will be obliterated. But as Sheikh will tell us, fana is one of these special kind of like words in the Islamic tradition that has a very, very deep meaning. And Iqbal is very in touch with the Sufi tradition. And fana here kind of means to be sublimated or to be obliterated, but in something greater, right? So when he means here the beginning and the end are all fana, he means everything goes back to God. Does anyone have any reflections or comments on this stanza or anything they'd like to share?
One thing that's really interesting here is because in his reconstruction of Islamic thought, he really furnishes his philosophy of time and how that his conception of time is actually quite deep. He's trying to solve a philosophical problem that's existed for a long time, and that's the idea of if there's an eternal God, then how has he created anything? Because if he's eternal, then and he created something, then it means something's changed in him. And this is a deep philosophical problem that you see many people within the Muslim tradition grapple with to try to reconcile God and his attributes that are bound by time. That's the difficulty. And so it's a very difficult kind of understanding. He has two conceptions of time. He has a time that is essentially an eternal type of unfolding, and then there's like a concrete, discrete time that we experience. But that's just a snapshot in this grand kind of concept. So he sees that hadith about وَلَا تَسُبُّ الدَّهْرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ الدَّهْرُ. Don't revile time because I am time, right? And so he has this idea that the flow of destiny is the divine creation and creative activity that's existed, and we cannot recognize and understand that because we're limited by this time. And it's interesting in this passage, that's what he says in the third paragraph. The sequence of day and night is a reverberation of the symphony of eternity from which the divine, the second one, the two-colored strand of silk from which the divine essence fashions its robe and attributes. He's referring to this aspect here, at least in my head when I read this. He's referring to his idea of the two types of time, the continuous, eternal, that cannot be divided into anything, that we divide things into seconds, but time is beyond that. And so basically the attributes of God can only be understood with a perception of time as well. So anyways, I just thought that was, I know that's very philosophical, but to me it was interesting because I've always tried to understand what he was trying to get at in reconstruction. It's an example of him taking philosophical concepts and putting it in poetry and you being able to appreciate it in a different light.
Right, excellent.
I just want to add to that if that's okay. But I like the last thing you said about how we can't actually understand it because we're limited by time when God is not limited by time. Because I was listening to Hamza Yusuf the other day and he said something about this. He said, we should not contemplate too much, please correct me if I'm wrong, but he said we should not contemplate too much on the infinity of God because basically you'll go crazy. Because we're created finite, we can't contemplate infinity too much. So we can contemplate attributes, but if we think about the fact that he's outside time, it's just going to go.
They say, لا تفكر في ذات الله وتفكر في خلق الله. Don't think about the essence of God, but think about the creation of God.
Of course, yeah. And I just wanted to comment about how he talks about pairs a lot. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we create you in pairs. In this, he talks about day and night, life and death, and then something else, old and new.
Beginning and interior, exterior, old and new. Exactly. Excellent. Wonderful. Just a comment of mine on the second couplet, from which the divine essence fashions its robe of attributes. I thought that, for me, that meant the things that happen in history or in our lives are manifestation of God's will, and through the actual events we can appreciate God's attributes. The good that happens or great trial that befalls people, we can appreciate more deeply God's 99 attributes. That's how I read that. Okay, so Iqbal is talking about time and everything ends. Everything is fana. Everything will end. And in the next stanza, maut hai,
upon which death is forbidden.
I should have written ishq there. My apologies.
Ishq is the essence of life upon which death is forbidden.
तुंद सुबुक शेर है गरचे ज़माने की रो इश्क खुद एक सेल है सेल को लेता है थाम.
Fast and free flows the tide of time, but Ishq itself is a tide that stems all tides.
So what is this force? What is this ishq that Iqbal is talking about? What do you guys think?
Sorry, I like that you didn't translate it because ishq is like a really like deep meaning.
Yes.
It's basically like love, right? But this sounds very romantic when I read it.
If I had put love here, that would have given a very bounded meaning.
Yeah.
So I left it as ishq. So what is ishq? Who knows about like this concept of ishq in Islam or in the tradition?
In Dari, ishq is like, I don't know about in Islam, but in Dari when we say ishq, it's like a certain sense of inebriation of love. So when someone is like inebriated by love, like so if someone's like staring off in the distance and they're kind of like zoning out, like my dad will be like, what's going on? Are you in love or something? He'll be like, oh, shakh shidi, which is like, are you in ishq?
So there's like muhabba, right? There's hub, but then there's ishq. Anyone else? So in the Islamic tradition, ishq is kind of associated with the divine. Ishq is this love that you have for God. And one of the ways that Iqbal uses ishq here in this poem and in his poetry, ishq is love of God, love for God, right? Love for his prophet, love for his creation. And ishq is this really powerful motivating force in Iqbal's poetry. And actually, in the Islamic tradition, someone said, a famous scholar, I think it was William Chittick, said that if you had to describe the entire Islamic tradition in one sentence or one emotion, it would be love. It's this force that drives so much of the spirit of Islamic civilization.
Ishq is basically is opposite to your your aql. Whenever Iqbal uses ishq, he also uses one word aql. Aql means his brain. The brain stops him from doing things, but ishq does it. So we can define it in from that event which happened with Hazrat Ibrahim, that Hazrat Ibrahim, when they prepared the fire, and he just jumped into that fire. While if a wise person will never think to jump into the fire, but he was so divine and so so much love with the God that he thinks that this fire cannot destroy me. So in another share, Iqbal says that बेखतर कूद पड़ा आतिश नमरूद में इश्क अक्ल है महवे तमाशाए लबे बामदी. It means that that ishq was the one who, without any thinking, without any hesitation, he jumped into the fire which was prepared by the Namrud, and aql and brain is still thinking whether I should do it or not. So ishq means when you are in a deep love with Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Allah, so then you don't think about your own personality, your own belongings, your own word. So everything is Allah. So that's ishq basically.
That बहुत शुक्रिया. बहुत खूब. Another example of ishq in the tradition is the sacrifice of Hazrat Ismail by Hazrat Ibrahim, right? Aql would say, no, wait, what am I doing? And ishq says, God has said this. Now, Iqbal uses ishq in also another way, apart from love. And as the brother said, the linguistic meaning of ishq also implies a kind of inebriation or a kind of passion, like extreme passion. And here ishq means a kind of inner turmoil, inner turmoil, an ardent pursuit and deep passion and energy. So that's another way that this word ishq is being used, apart from just love. So like energy and passion. Okay, we'll keep reading. इश्क दमे जिब्राइल, इश्क दिले मुस्तफ़ा, इश्क खुदा का रसूल, इश्क खुदा का कलाम.
Ishq is the breath of Jibreel, Ishq is the heart of Mustafa, Ishq is the Lord's Prophet, and Ishq is the Lord's speech.
इश्क फ़कीह हरम, इश्क अमीर जुनूद, इश्क है बिनुस सबील, उसके हज़ारों मकाम.
Ishq is the jurist of the Kaaba, Ishq is the leader of the troops, Ishq is a traveller for whom rests 1,000 abodes.
इश्क के मिज़राब से नग़मा तारे हयात, इश्क से नूरे हयात, इश्क से नारे हयात.
Ishq is the pick that brings music to the string of life. Ishq is the light of life. Ishq is the fire of life.
पेकर नूरी को है सजदा मुयस्सर तो क्या, उसको मुयस्सर नहीं सोज़ व गुदाज़ सुजूद.
Angels may prostrate, but so what? Unknown to them is the burning and melting of sujood.
So Sheikh, we were just talking about the concept of ishq in the tradition and how Iqbal deploys it and how it's understood. So this last verse, I wanted to include it especially. This is an example of what Iqbal means by ishq. So angels prostrate, angels are like perfect beings, they worship, they do everything right, but they don't have this element of free will, right? So ishq is that force that pulls and pushes, and when you worship in the best way, you know, with purity and sincerity and for God, that is so sweet, right? And it's such a brilliant moment of bliss and transcendence even, you know. Whereas and ishq is what makes our ibadat beyond just an obligation. Ishq is what ought to drive us, you know, to excel in our ibadat. And this is also kind of a very, I guess, Sufi idea where it's like, okay, alhamdulillah, there's heaven, there's lovely things in heaven, but I want to worship God for the sake of God, rather than for any kind of reward. So this is kind of what's being gotten at here. Any thoughts or comments on the stanza?
In the first paragraph, what's meant by that which some man of God would have rendered true?
Yes. So we'll get to this in the next theme, but it's basically ishq is a passion, it's a feeling that is waiting to be realized. So ishq is realized through certain actions and certain works. So that's what that's getting hinting at, and we'll look at it in the next
I think
stanza.
it's the idea, is this right after the first one, or is there passages between this one and
This
the
is right after the first one, yes.
To me, it read like, amidst this, meaning the passing of time and the rise and fall of civilization, there's an eternal stability. It goes back to the point you mentioned last time about the idea that in life we kind of witness the names and attributes of Allah. So that's how I read it. Like, amidst this, there's the eternal stability, meaning like, it's not nihilistic, like, oh yeah, what's the whole point of building something like this? There was something there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So everything passes, but ishq is that one force that transcends time and death and life. Things done for ishq, for the sake of ishq, are timeless. Iqbal is sitting in this 800-year-old mosque, and like 800 years is a long time, but he can feel the power and passion of the ishq that built this mosque.
There's another thing we can see it in another way, that everything will get fana. Everything will be wiped off. But the only thing which will survive is ishq. Like Namrud set the fire. Fire is gone, Namrud is gone, the Sultanate is gone, everything is gone, but Ibrahim's ishq still remains. So the passion of the Ibrahim is still surviving. So that's what Iqbal is saying here, that everything will get fana, everything will be gone, but the ishq will remain.
So tie yourself to works of ishq and work for that.
The Quranic concepts, كل من عليها فان. It's the same word that he used, fana. Everything will be disappeared. The other term, so ishq is not technically not a term coming from our nusus. Like, there's no hadith about ishq or Quran, and so the term that's used, kind of the same concept. Ibn Qayyim mentions ibadah as being the highest level of this. It's just the terminology. It's the same concepts that are being described here. True ibadah is basically what he's describing as ishq here, essentially. The love that's behind it.
Okay, next page. Now Iqbal addresses the poem. Addresses the mosque. Alhamdulillah. ए हरम कुर्तुबा इश्क से तेरा वजूद इश्क सरापा दवाम जिसमें नहीं रफ्त बूद.
O sanctuary of Qurطبہ, your existence comes from Ishq. Ishq eternal, never waning, never fading.
रंग हो या खिश्त ओ संग चंग हो या हर्फ सूत मौजज़ाए फन की है खून जिगर से नमूद.
Not from pigments and colors or instruments and sounds, rather the miracle of art springs from the lifeblood of the artist.
So here he's reflecting on the excellence he sees around him, the beautiful calligraphy and geometry of the mosque around him. And he says that it's not what I'm seeing which is important, but it's the emotion and purpose of the person, or the emotion and purpose that drove the artist who made this. That's the most critical and crucial thing. Here he's also making a comment on the purpose of art, right? Art should be driven by the right motivations. And when it is, it transcends. And when it's not, it's something debased. तेरे बिना पायदार तेरे सतूं बेशुमार शाम के सहरा में हो जैसे हुजूम नखील.
Your foundations are deep, your pillars are countless, like the palms of the plains of Syria.
And here Iqbal is talking about the actual structure of the mosque. So it has these brilliant double arches that just go on and on and on and on, and they're just repeated. And you stand at one end of the mosque and it's like you're gazing down into infinity. And these, so Masjid-e-Nabawi is inspired by Masjid-e-Qurtuba. But Masjid-e-Qurtuba was inspired by, it's said, the date palms of Syria, because it was built by people and a civilization that came from that part of the world, the Umayyads, right? And the masjid of the Umayyad Masjid in Damascus also has a very similar architecture to Masjid-e-Qurtuba. And they look like date palms. It's such a beautiful construction. And actually, if you go to the cathedrals of Europe, Gothic cathedrals and otherwise, they actually copied the architecture of the Masjid-e-Qurtuba. So this concept of the arches is all throughout medieval architecture. Monasteries of Europe and the churches, and they went to Spain, to Qurtuba, which was a shining beacon in the literal dark ages of Europe, and they were inspired in so many ways, and they took that. So next time you go to a fancy cathedral, Notre Dame or whatever, note the arches. They're inspired by the date palms of Syria. तेरे दरो बाम पर वादिये ऐमन का नूर तेरा मीनार बुलंद जलवागाह जिब्राइल.
Your arches, your terraces glistening with the light of the valley of Ayman, your soaring minaret bright in the resplendence of Jibrail's glory.
Masjid-e-Qurtuba's minar is also stunning, epic. It's such a grand structure. It's not like one sort of like lone minar, it's almost like a fortress in and of itself. It's a very unique structure. And here the reference to the valley of Ayman is apparently a reference to the valley where Hazrat Musa received his nabuwat. So this is another sort of reference in the poetic tradition. So the mosque, the passion within it brims with spirituality, essentially. Didaye anjum mein hai teri zameen asman, ke tere sadiyon se hai, ke sadiyon se hai teri faza Be'azan.
The stars look upon your precincts as a piece of heaven itself. But for centuries, alas, your halls have not resonated with the call of the muaddin.
And so, of course, visiting Masjid-e-Qurtuba is a very melancholic experience. It's a cathedral. It's a testament to the lost glory of Muslim civilization. And what's even more tragic is what happened to the Muslims after Granada fell. They were literally expelled and forced to convert and sort of wiped from the pages of time. So that's the there's sort of like a deep grief in like Muslim consciousness regarding that. And Iqbal here is participating in a centuries-long poetic tradition of mourning Andalusia, and it's a very apt couplet here. Okay. Now we'll move to theme number 4. Here in this theme, Iqbal. So the majesty of the mosque causes Iqbal to reflect on the people who built it and the qualities of a true Muslim. And I didn't mention this, but he also talks about the positive impact of Islam in Spain on Europe as well. Now, Tera Jamal o Jalal Mard Khuda ki Dalil, wo bhi Jalil o Jamil, tu bhi Jalil o Jamil.
Your beauty and majesty personify the graces of the man of faith. He is beautiful and majestic, just as you too are beautiful and majestic.
तुझसे हुआ आश्कार बंदा मोमिन का राज उसके दिनों की तपिश उसकी शबों का गुदाज.
Though you became revealed the mystery of the faith through you. Through you became revealed the mystery of the faithful servant, the fire of his fervent days, the bliss of his tender nights.
उसका मुकाम बुलंद उसका ख्याल अजीम उसका सरूर उसका शौक उसका नियाज उसका नाज.
His lofty station, his noble thought, his joy, his adore, his humility, his spirit.
हाथ है अल्लाह का बंदा मोमिन का हाथ गालिब व कार अफरी कार कुशा कार साज. उसका दिल बेनियाज.
Like dust, the light, he has the qualities of a Mawla. His contented self makes no demands of this world nor the other.
So what's this word Mawla that I didn't translate? Does anyone know?
Mawla is like a sheikh or something, right? Like a man of knowledge, pious man.
There's like yeah.
Saint, maybe?
So the word Maulana comes from Mawla.
Right.
Yes, yes. Anyone else?
It can be something like love or closely protector, I think.
Yeah. So Mawla is a really fascinating word. It has like 3 different concurrent meanings. It means slave. It means friend. Of course, and the qualities of a lord. So someone who is not to be messed with as well. Someone who has a sense of dignity and a sense of self.
His desires are modest, his aims exalted, his manner charming, his glance beneficent.
नरम दम गुफ्तगू नरम दम जुस्तजू रज़म हो या बज़म हो पाक दिल व पाक बाज.
Gentle in conversation, fervent in pursuit, whether in battle or at rest, pure of heart and pure of action.
Now this is one of my favorite verses of Iqbal's. Nuktay purkar haq mard khuda ka yaqeen. और ये
Of the and supposition.
So a purkar in Urdu is a compass which you use to draw for mathematics or geometry, and not the compass that points for north. What's interesting about the purkar is that the compass sort of shows you the way, but the purkar draws the way. So it's a really interesting and very deliberate use of this item in the poetry. We live in a world that is so clouded and beset and besieged by nonsense and chaos and confusion. Iqbal says, no, the man of truth knows where he's going, knows what's up, knows what's true. Marde Khuda ka yaqeen. It's such a powerful, decisive verse. Everything else is just supposition and guessing and nonsense. Anyone have any thoughts on this stanza?
Yeah, I do, because I just noticed that the last part of this one and the last part of the last one, so the one before this, it kind of ended on a darker note, and I would probably consider this a darker note too. And the reason being is, while you normally wouldn't consider the words illusion and enchantment and supposition to be dark ways of describing things, I think it is in comparison to the rest of the stanza, if that makes sense. So basically, like, illusion and enchantment and supposition, I consider it basically as calling it a deception. So it's kind of giving negative attributes to the world when it compares it to the faith of the believer, or the attributes of the believer.
Anyone else?
I think all the qualities he describes, like, it reminds me very much when we hear the qualities of the Prophet and the Sahaba, right? In the sense that there were people who were not ambitious is the wrong word, but were active and pursued things, but at the same time sort of it wasn't for themselves, it was for the greater good, and they corrupt and awful, and I'm not going to do anything about it. Or people who are like chase money and power at all costs.
And people like Alexander and Napoleon tried to be giants and chased after
thinking where they're not asking anything in the next life either. It's all just for the love of God.
Exactly right. So in this worldview, or in this perspective, in the Sufi view, it's like I'm denied worldly pleasure here in this world, and I get it in the next world, but to me they seem equally illusionary. And there's this verse the Sheikh mentioned, كل شيء عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. It's one of the most epic and deep and profound verses of the Quran. Everything on this earth will be fana, and what will remain is the face of your Lord, most resplendent and most grand. And this Sufi idea is that the highest level of Jannah is literally just seeing God and just seeing His face for eternity, and that's it. That's all you need, rather than enjoying like a souped up version of nice things here on earth. It's a different way of thinking, and one of the beautiful things about Islam, in my opinion, is that it has something for every psychology, right? Every kind of person, every kind of mind. For some people, yeah, of course, all I want to do is party forever. Epic. For others who are of a different disposition, that may not be appealing to them. Or for others who live in a different, even socio-political context, that's not necessarily something that appeals to them. So there's something in Islam for every psychology, subhanAllah. And we have love of God, we also have fear of God. And a good balanced Islam is one that, of course, balances the two. And yet, every verse of the Quran, every surah, except one begins with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, God the most merciful and the most beneficent. God could have started his surahs with any one of his other qualities, but He chose those two qualities of love and mercy and compassion for a reason. So it would be safe to say that, of course, God's love outweighs his wrath and his anger.
For me, that also very much comes to his contented softness and demands on this world, not the other. It comes very much from that place of humility. As in, I will do my efforts, but the rest I leave to God. As in, who am I to make demands on the next world?
So, yeah. Ji.
When you said like they don't want anything from the next world, it's like that's like a really high level because it means like they only want Allah to be pleased with them. Like when I was a little kid and I heard that Imam said the first time Muslims see Allah in Jannah they'll look for like these thousands of years, and I was like, what? I was like, obviously I don't understand.
Of course.
Yeah, it's very, very aspirational.
Yeah. It's the highest level that we ought to aspire to. Okay, let's go to the last page. Bismillah.
Tell me how to say that first.
Guadalquivir.
Guadalquivir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is how Iqbal ends his poem. So thank you for bearing with us. We're almost done. आबे रवान कबीर तेरे किनारे कोई देख रहा है किसी और ज़माने का ख्वाब.
Oh, the ever-flowing waters of Guadalquivir. On your shore, someone is seeing a vision of another age.
So the Guadalquivir comes from the Arabic Wadi-e-Kabir, and it's the river that flows through Qurطبہ, of course. आलम नू है अभी पर्दाए तकदीर में तेरी निगाहों में है इसकी सहर मेरी निगाहों में है इसकी सहर बेहिजाब.
The new world is as yet behind the veil of destiny, but in my sight, its dawn is unveiled.
पर्दा उठा दूं अगर चेहरा या अफकार से ला ना सकेगा फरंग तेरी नुआओं किताब.
If I would lift the veil from the face of my thoughts, the European would not be able to bear the heat of my songs.
He's saying, he's offering the way forward, right? And he's saying this is how we can go forward and fix things and resurrect the ummah. But these ideas, the Europeans can't handle them. It's a different way, is what he's saying. And he ends here with a message, and it's kind of more now like a communal message to everyone, to all the Muslims. जिसमें ना हो इनकिलाब मौत है वो जिंदगी रूह उमम की हयात कश मकश इनकिलाब.
Life without change is death. The life of the spirit of nations is the tumult and the turmoil of revolution, change.
सूरत शमशीर है दस्ते कज़ा में सूरत शमशीर है दस्ते कज़ा में वो कौम करती है जो हर ज़मां अपने अमल का हिसाब.
Keen as a sword in the hands of destiny is the nation that evaluates its actions at each step.
So he's saying to the Muslims, and he's also kind of reflecting on history, I guess, because he's in the ruins of this epic civilization. He's like, these are people who didn't necessarily evaluate their action at each step. They fell into decline for whatever reasons. So he's saying we need to learn from history, and we need to reconstitute ourselves and sort of rethink how we're doing things to do better and to go forward. Does anyone have any thoughts on this last theme, stanza number 8?
I just think it's like sort of in line with a lot of his poetry, where of course he laments a lot of the past, he laments how things were, but he sort of also always tries to end on a message of hope or inspiring action. That's very important.
For sure.
But let's think ahead, and you have to, I suppose, be creative and be willing to change things, and also learn from the past as well when he talks about evaluating actions.
I didn't include this, but just before these verses, he also talks about what's happened in Europe in the past few centuries. And he said, Europe has gone through all this turmoil and inqilab and revolution, religious and social and technological. And we need to learn something from that. He also reflects on that. So he's reflecting on the world around him because he lived in a time of incredible change as well. Yeah.
Use that word, jigar. So Khune Jigar is also a term Iqbal used very frequently. That basically represents the sincere efforts you do to get a goal. So he ends his this poem with this word that if a Muslim is a true Muslim and he does his sincere efforts with the khune jigar, he can change the world and he can turn around the table. So that's what he gives a message at the end.
I didn't include the last one because I didn't want to explain what khune jigar was amidst everything else. But basically the jigar is the liver. And in the world of ghazal, in the world of poetry, the heart, right, is always wounded and damaged and bleeding and distraught. But the jigar, the liver, is where fresh blood is made. So the liver or the jigar is the organ that keeps you moving in a sense, right? The heart may take hits, but the liver is that which is the source of fresh action and energy and passion. So that's the metaphor of jigar there.
Yeah, and also in Dari, I mean, it sounds weird when you said in English to say like you're my liver.
Yeah, yeah.
But like jigaram is used more than any kind of like dilemma. So it's more romantic or typical to say you're my liver rather than saying you're my heart. So
Exactly.
it's just a kind of dichotomy between English and Dari, but yeah, in Dari it sounds very normal to use jigar in a metaphorical way.
Same in Urdu. Yeah.
Yeah. In Iqbal, he uses three terms: akal, ishq, and khune jigar. So, akal basically represents the brain. The brain job is to think and to stop the person to doing that job. It basically its moves are more cautious moves, and brain always give you a wise opinion that don't do this thing, don't do this thing. While dil represents the ishq. Yeah, ishq means that just do it. Whatever you want to do, just do it. While jigar represents in Iqbal's poetry is efforts. That energy, that basically, so these are the three terms he uses to represent his.
And we take no responsibility for any unwise action that may occur after the end of this session. Okay, Bismillah. So we'll finish up. Thank you, everyone. It was a much more relaxed and reflective and very different vibe from last week. If there's any closing comments, let me know. Otherwise, we can finish up. GME?
We have read this and we have understood, I think, most of it. Can we try to implement it on ourselves in today's days, 2023, in Brisbane?
So what are some ideas for practical implementation? If Sheikh was here, this is how we would end the talk as well.
Reflecting on the fourth theme, the man of God. I think this here is like a framework. These are our greatest lessons that we should try and implement, and these all come out of Prophet Prophet's conduct, his seerah and his life. And I think if we reflect on each of these stanzas throughout the day, just on our phone, whatever, or on the wall like mine, then perhaps we can implement things like themes of personality, such as the might of man, the might of the man of faith is the might of the Almighty. Here it's good to see that still that we can enact the good qualities of God on this earth by having that
Khudi. Yeah.
But also the effort.
Oh, the khuna jigar. Yeah, exactly.
One best thing about Iqbal's poetry is that it gives you a hope. It gives you courage to do the things. It gives you a khudi. His poetry does not disappoint you. Apart from the shikwa and jawab shikwa, you read through his whole poetry, he will never complain anything. And that complaints are with the God. For example, he goes to the Sarangapatim in Mysore, and he goes to Tipu Sultan's tomb. He does not cry there for Tipu Sultan, where he praises his courage and praises his bravery and praises. Similarly, here in this poem, we have seen that he does not cry about the Muslims of the Constantinia and that
Andalusia.
Andalusia. He does not disappoint you. He gives you a hope. He talks about the positive things. So that's his main thing in his poetry.
And here on page 4, these qualities, this is a blueprint. This is how we should be. This is what we should strive for. To be powerful, dominant, creative, exemplary, yet still be like dust and still be like light. They seem such contradictory qualities, but we see them manifested in the lives of the Sahaba. Gentle in conversation, so kind, considerate, compassionate, but fervent in pursuit, determined, right? Unstoppable. For the right objectives and the right goals.
Pure of heart, pure of action.
Pure of heart, pure of action, whether in battle or at rest. Subhanallah.
In a more literal sense as to how we implement this, I guess. For me personally, or maybe the other boys, I mean, we all just got back from beating each other up.
Yeah.
So when we read poetry, it's like relaxing, isn't it? We feel worked up and then we're just like, relax, we sit around, we read some poetry, it's like calming. So I guess that's what we do in a more literal sense, implementing it.
So, okay.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes.
I think one of the dangerous combo is, I like how the theme 4 and theme 5 are right next to each other, because the best thing is to have a man of God, but then if they follow up with having a vision of a new world, then that's where the new age will come. Because that's essentially how the wave of Muslims happened, is that we had our Prophet was a man of God with a vision to create a new age, and without one or the other, I don't think we would have all the capabilities of creating this new age. So that's just something to add on.
Excellent.
And I think it's really the connection between the two is really interesting as well, because if you just have theme 5, importance of women, the life of the nation, like it's in creating the world you want to see. We without, I guess, keeping your ego in check, that's how you end up with things like extreme examples, things like fascism, or like really unideal societies where you're just imposing your will on others. But I think it's really interesting that he does place the man of God beforehand. It's like these are the qualities you should have. And then
Before you could think
before
of the vision.
Excellent. Yes. Awesome. Ji?
I like this point in it, that he gives us hope. Like it is roughly 100 years ago. But even at that time, he said that the new world is as yet behind the wheel of destiny, but in my sight, its dawn is unveiled. This dawn is at this time. We are sitting here and we are trying to understand and learn these things. Actually, this is the dawn, the sahar, that is now getting gradually behijab, and it will become more and more evident with time, this century. And in the second last one, I'm trying to implement it on my life. He said if there is no inqilab for an individual, like the life is like a death. Life, if it is a routine life that we go to college, unis, or we start a business and we get money, we buy a land, we make a house, and then this happen, that happen, buy a car, and then we die. That's a very routine type of life. That life is death. Because there is no inqilab is revolution. You have translated it as a change. So change is that ruh of actually, then he went to the whole nation. Iskash makash inqilab is the struggle for this change. So struggle for change for myself, being like a woman, mother, housewife, everything, is to keep on trying to want to learn Islam. Like if I go to faith circle, I come here, I try to do whatever activities within my. So that is my Kashmakash Inqilab. And then he brings it in these last two lines for a whole nation. It can be a Muslim nation, it can be a non-Muslim too. But as in our background and the way he is telling about Qurtuba, that if we keep on looking at what we do, if we evaluate our actions in every step, then we are like a sword in the hands of destiny. We can change the things back to normal, and we will take Qurtuba back.
Potentially, yes, maybe, yes.
Inshallah.
But this message of change and don't be still, stillness is death, this is so relevant for all of us. It's like always try and be better, do better, level up, learn more, upskill. I hate such a neoliberal world. Upskill, you know.
It's like a corporate.
Yeah, it's like such a corporate, piece of slang. But learn that new language, as mashallah Osama is doing, or strive hard in uni and try to improve your financial situation, or whatever it is. But keep at it, keep going, and never be content or satisfied with like, yeah, I can't learn anymore. There's no more I can learn. There's no more I can do. I just, this is it. This is me. Always strive to push those bounds. That's a really applicable message, I think, in Iqbal's poetry. Sorry?
Ihsan.
With ihsan, of
That
course.
is ihsan.
That is ihsan. Yes. Okay. Bismillah. So we'll finish up. Thank you everyone for coming and attending. Hope it was beneficial.